So, today's topic is one of the unhelpful thinking styles. You can call it catastrophizing. That's probably the most descriptive way to call it. So, just a little recap on the previous psych talk. So, what we think can affect how we feel and how we act. So, unhelpful thoughts can make us act in ways that don't necessarily make situations better. In fact, often when we have unhelpful thoughts, we can act in ways that make situations worse. Worse for ourselves, worse for those around us. So it's useful to be able to identify unhelpful thinking when you are doing it, so that you can try and break up or disrupt those cycles, so they don't necessarily turn into, say, spirals of negativity, if you will. And if possible, the first step is generally just being able to tell if you're catastrophizing. But if possible, to be able to challenge those thoughts as well, internally, so that you can hopefully have better outcomes. And if you do that enough, perhaps you can build up positive thinking habits that you can take into future situations, so that basically when you do meet with a situation where you could be thinking helpful thoughts or unhelpful thoughts, you can have the habit of choosing to access your helpful thoughts instead. So what is catastrophization or catastrophizing? It's a little bit in the name of it, but basically it's where we believe something is worse than it actually is. It's usually non-rational or irrational, these kinds of thoughts. But for whatever reason, due to the heightened emotions that we're feeling at particular situations, we don't necessarily have access to reasoning that might tell us that things maybe aren't as bad as they appear or as they seem in our minds to be. So you can also sort of see this as, or think of this as, overthinking situations. So they might be about current situations, they might be about future events, these thoughts. As an example, today has been the worst day of my life, right? I won't say necessarily often, but many people have had that thought. And it's, if you were to be rational about it, you would say, well, it would have to be a very bad day to be the worst day of your life. And also, do you honestly remember every single day that you've experienced? And perhaps there have been days, honestly, that have been worse or better. Another one, I am definitely going to fail this exam. This test, I'm definitely going to fail this interview, they're never going to hire me. Catastrophizing. Often with little or no evidence to really suggest or prove that this is going to happen. And often this is a future event, so there's not even any way to actually prove whether it will happen or not. You're simply acting or thinking based on very heightened emotions, often anxiety, But it could be heightened sadness, heightened frustration, heightened anger that are making us think, you know, think of the worst possible scenario. Another one that people with social anxiety, or just, you don't have to have social anxiety, you can just feel socially anxious, and then be thinking, for instance, well, I don't want to go to this party because it's going to be terrible. Let's say because my ex is going to be there, because nobody's going to talk to me at this party. So, yeah, it's going to be terrible. It's going to be the worst. I'm not going to enjoy it, even though the party is in the future and it hasn't happened yet. These are some of the thoughts people often have. And often these thoughts don't just happen once and you let go of them. They go around and around in your head. So, you know, often the initial thought of, I might fail this exam, or this party's going to be terrible, might not be so bad. But if that thought continues to sort of sit in your head and marinate and percolate, and goes round and around, it tends to make things worse. It tends to make the situation bigger and bigger, more important maybe than it actually is in your mind, and definitely worse in your mind. So often catastrophizing starts from a small event. So let's say you've had a misunderstanding with your friend, a close friend, or your partner. This can create negative thoughts like, well, now they hate me. Today is going to be ruined. Today is going to be a terrible day now. And also, if you let those thoughts sort of simmer in your mind, it could lead to anxiety that your friend is going to not care about you anymore. You may lose them as a close friend. It may lead to thoughts that your partner is going to leave you. If you keep thinking negative thoughts, so like they hate me now, then I can't believe I said that, and often catastrophizing turns into sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you are thinking, well, I'm going to fail this exam, or I'm definitely not going to get this job, or I'm going to hate this party, often, let's say in the exam example, you may give up and not study for the exam because you think, well, I'm going to fail it anyway. And you will not perform as well as you could have. Similarly with the job interview. With the party, if you think, well, this party's going to suck, no one's going to talk to me, and I'm going to look really awkward, you may go and already have a defensive attitude so that you're not very approachable, so that you look like you're not having a good time, and therefore you don't. So that's another issue with having catastrophizing thoughts. And probably the biggest issue with catastrophizing is that the thoughts can often spiral into quite dark places. So even if we just take the exam or a test example, I haven't studied enough for this test. Okay, so that's the surface level. I haven't studied enough. I've been procrastinating. I've been watching YouTube, watching Twitch too much, and I haven't studied enough. Okay, I'm going to fail this test, and my parents are going to kill me. Okay, so that's already catastrophizing because the test hasn't happened yet. You don't know what's going to happen. And if you started studying right now instead of thinking about it, maybe you would do well. Maybe you're actually quite smart and you'll do well anyway. But these kinds of thoughts will spiral. So, haven't studied enough. I'm going to fail this test and my parents are going to kill me. I'm definitely not going to get into the course or career that I want. Okay, so again, taking it even a step further, right? When these thoughts sit in our head, we start thinking bigger and bigger. I'm definitely not going to have a future. I'm going to end up being a failure. and a laughing stock with my friends and family. You see where that, once we start getting to these really sort of existential level, life defining thoughts, just from a little, I haven't studied for this test, I've been procrastinating. That's where, you can start having some really dark thoughts about, well, what's the point of even being here? I'm definitely gonna, I'm gonna end up a failure anyway. So again, what's the point? So hopefully, with all of that, you can see why catastrophizing can be very unhelpful in terms of if you engage with it a lot, and why we might want to put in some circuit breakers so that if you notice yourself catastrophizing, maybe we can put in some practices or some little strategies to help get you out of that spiral before we hit the really heavy stuff. Okay, so the first tip would be identification, knowing yourself, having some self-knowledge to know when you're catastrophizing, to know what kinds of situations often will make you catastrophize. Is it to do with study and academics? Is that what you place your importance on? And study and academics makes you catastrophize. Is it social situations? Is that what makes your emotions heightened, your anxiety heightened, and therefore that's where you do a lot of catastrophizing? Is it, for some people at the moment, with COVID, is it health concerns that make you catastrophize? I'm definitely going to get COVID, or I have COVID. When you might have some mild symptoms. Oh, I definitely have COVID, and I'm going to get everyone sick, and I'm going to be responsible for that, and it's going to be my fault if anyone in my family gets really long-term problems from that, or anything like that. So knowing when you catastrophize is helpful, knowing what kinds of situations you do it, and knowing what kinds of thoughts you engage in when you do catastrophize. That's half of the battle, I would say. So moving on to some a little bit more practical strategies to help you potentially challenge catastrophizing thoughts. One of the strategies that I'll be talking about a lot throughout this series on unhelpful thoughts is around checking the evidence. So as I said before, often catastrophizing happens even though the thought might be, when we are not in that heightened state of emotion, the thought might be irrational. So really checking the evidence for that thought and against that thought. So sometimes we use the example of, being in a courtroom. So you've got the prosecution, you've got the defense for that argument, right? For that thought. The thought is, I'm definitely going to fail this exam. Okay, let's go with the prosecution. What would you say is the evidence that you're definitely going to fail? I haven't studied enough. Do you fail every exam that you don't study enough for? How hard is this? How many people are going to fail this exam? Is the exam set up for making you fail? I don't know, right? But you've got to check all of this. Even if I do fail the exam, to the next step, does that mean I'm a failure? Does that mean all my dreams and hopes are crushed? Does that mean my parents are actually going to kill me? And even if they do, has this happened before? And will I be okay even if that happens? So, all of those are arguments from the defense, I guess. And that goes sort of into the other strategy that I was going to mention, which is what happened last time I catastrophized. So last time I thought this thought, the party is going to suck, I'm definitely going to fail this exam. What happened? Did I fail? Right? It's not often that someone will fail every exam in their life. So there will be many examples, often, of times in the past where we felt, oh, we haven't studied enough, and then somehow we got good marks. There will be examples where, we thought, exercise, it's such a rainy day, and I've just got out of bed, I'm really lazy, I don't feel like it, and if I go, it's going to suck. But then we go to the gym or whatever, we go for a jog, and we feel invigorated afterwards. So the evidence from previous experience might be often that if we just go through with it, despite our negative thoughts, actually the situation is never as bad as we think it is. Maybe that's the evidence in your life that you can draw on to help you. Put things in perspective. So what are the worst possible outcomes, the best possible outcomes, and what are the probability of those? And this is a little bit, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but this, again, I'm just giving you more tools so that maybe if this is helpful for you, you can try this instead. So the best possible scenario is I ace the test. The worst possible scenario is I fail it. How likely are each of those to happen? And what are the consequences? Are the consequences as dire as I'm thinking right now that they will be? Are there other options? Does it have to be a black and white pass or fail? Maybe I won't do as well as I'd hoped. Maybe that's more realistic. And what are the consequences of that? Am I okay with that more than, well, I'm definitely going to fail? A big one, if someone who loves me, or a good friend, or, knew I was thinking this thought, this catastrophizing thought, what would they say? What would someone, a parent, your partner, your close friend, if you told them that you were having this thought, I'm definitely going to fail, I'm never going to get that job, this party is absolutely going to suck, and no one's going to talk to me, whatever the thought is, or you've just had a fight with your partner, they're definitely going to leave me. If you told that thought to someone who cares about you, what would they say? Often, when you think of it that way, we can flip it and say, well, if a friend came to you and said, you know what, I'm definitely going to fail this exam because I've only studied 30 minutes and I've been procrastinating and I don't know if I've got enough time now before tomorrow's exam. What would you say to them? Would you say, oh yeah, you're definitely going to fail? Yeah, don't worry about it. You're screwed. And also, you're going to fail, and then all your career prospects are over, and your parents are going to kill you, and you're going to be unemployed for the rest of your life. Is that what you would say to your friend? And if not, why are you saying that to yourself? And lastly, and this is a more broad one or general one, how helpful is it for you to be thinking this way? So even if you were going to fail an exam, does spending 30 minutes thinking about it help you not fail? Is that an actual helpful activity to be engaged in if the goal is to not fail that exam? If the goal is to, if you've had a fight with your partner, if the goal is to not make that into a big deal and you don't want them to leave you, is it helpful to sit there thinking about them leaving you? Would it not be more helpful to try and communicate with them? With the exam situation, would it not be more helpful to start studying? So, again, with all of these strategies, and I'll go over them, again and again with other types of unhelpful thoughts in, future episodes, the next couple of days. But the thing to note is the more strategies you have in your toolkit, the better. Not every strategy will work in every situation, and often we will be in heightened states of emotion and we won't remember them. Sometimes the strategies won't work in certain situations. That's okay. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't keep trying to challenge those unhelpful thoughts. It doesn't mean you need to necessarily stop thought challenging and sit with those thoughts. Hopefully, even if you can't find a strategy, you could have somebody else help you put things in perspective, check the evidence, sit with you and work through your unhelpful thinking. So, as with last time, we'll end off with a quote that I like. I don't actually know where this quote should be attributed to, so apologies for that, but if you do know, please tell me. Worrying won't stop the bad stuff from happening. It just stops you from enjoying the good. All right. As always, thanks for listening, and I hope to see you in another video soon. Thanks.